No, I just think I don't see your age because you strike me as incredibly youthful. And then you're like, I'm almost 50. I'm like, what?
Youthful or immature.
You said it, not me. I would never say that out loud.
I would lean toward fun, right? Yes, not old.
Well, you also don't talk like Gandalf. What? Gandalf's not a chain smoker.
You're listening to The Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Welcome back to The Janchi Show. I am one of your hosts, Nathan Nowak, along with KJ and Patrick here, who are laughing at me because I have not done an intro in a very long time, so I feel like I'm a little out of practice.
You're doing great,
was really great. It was really good. It was just very loud.
Sorry.
I think that's what's making me laugh.
I was overzealous. Sorry.
Always coming in hot.
Yeah, Well, how are you guys doing?
Doing all right. I think actually daylight savings time helped my brain's capacity to do this recording because it's not quite as late.
I know it's still bright outside too.
Yeah,
so
it does look bright out where you are.
And now, Patrick, you are 1 year older right now, so you are, just celebrating your birthday. Happy belated.
Thank you. Yes, I am 35 now, and my child is 6, so I am feeling the throes of being an adult. It's great.
Yeah. Adulting at 35.
No, I feel bad for him.
Well, parenting.
And he was only sick once in the whole first year of his life, so I feel pretty thankful for that.
Dang.
But he went to daycare for a week and immediately now has pink eye, so.
Yeah.
Shout out to daycare.
That's
daycare
how it
does
works.
that. Yep.
It does. I remember when KJ went.
Oh, yeah. The good news is it gets better. The bad news is it's rough getting there.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says. Yeah, you got another couple months or whatever then you'll be good. I'm like, okay, great.
It was weeks for us, but yeah, it
Didn't Olivia get sick the very first day?
Pretty much. But she also started in January, so I was like, is it the worst time to start daycare? Yeah, it is? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and just pop her in there. And then my mom was immediately, because my mom works at the daycare, and she's like, yeah, there's a lot of sickness going around. I'm like, Mom, come on.
Mom, come on, Mom. Come on, Mom.
Who wants to, for our new listeners, explain what Janchi means?
I shall take it. Janchi, we call ourselves the Janchi Show because we are Korean American adoptees, and Janchi is a Korean word that means to feast or to banquet. And traditionally, we have done this show feasting and banqueting and just generally throwing a party for ourselves, our adoptee friends who are coming on and sharing our stories. And then also, historically, and maybe again in the future, we have eaten a Asian food or drink snack type item. Nathan is shaking a bag for the listeners who can't see this, which is all of you, because we don't do video. He's shaking a bag full of snacks. So eventually, soon, we'll be getting back.
I have bought you guys
territory.
some snacks. I will send them
John
shortly.
Up in this.
Yeah,
nice.
I'll send you guys a little care package here this week. So. Yeah, since we have started to get back into a routine of recording, I thought I was at H Mart and was like, hey, now's a good time. Here's some new snacks. So,
about time, Dad. Thanks.
You're welcome, Snack Master.
What?
I don't know. Snack. So, that's what I feel like because that's all I do. I'm sitting around just looking at all the snacks going,
I thought you were
this
calling
would be
me
good.
Snack Master.
No. I am the Snack Master.
And
now after saying it, I kind of don't want to be called that. So.
I was born in the snack aisle, molded by it.
Cool. Well, we're back for another week. What's up?
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, you recently tagged us from your other more successful podcast account, Conversation Piece Pod, on Instagram, and it was a reel of you from your 100th episode. And you were talking about stories, the power of storytelling, how you got into that, and what the Janchi Show has done in doing that. And I just think storytelling is really interesting, and that just got me excited to be talking about that. But do you remember what that conversation was and what you were like, what that train of thought was like?
Yeah. So, I was asked just what I thought, like when I knew about the impact of storytelling and like what the power of storytelling was, and it was just from having done the Janchi show, and it was because I think specifically, I didn't mention this in the response or in the reel that you're referencing, but I think it was when we recorded with Nick Capicoto. He was talking about something I remember, and I just remember thinking like, well, one, it super resonated with my story and made me think about my story differently, but also like I was like, man, there's something to this, like strangers telling us just really super intimate parts of their life experience that like this means something. Like this means something different, I think, than I've ever really thought about what it means to like be in conversation with someone. And so like
Yes.
that's where that whole thought process of like the privilege of storytelling comes from. And in the reel, I don't think I actually explain it as well as I would probably explain it now, which is like the privilege is really to be on the receiving end of anybody's story.
Mhm.
Like I think I
And
might
the
have said that the privilege is to be able to tell the story, but I think it's everybody's right to be able to share their story whenever they want to. But I think it's a real privilege to be able to sit there and listen to somebody, and I think that we don't think about that very often, and we just take it for granted. So it was through literally having adoptee after adoptee come on here and just be like, "Here's my life," and I was just like, "Man, this is wild." Like that people are willing to do that.
Yeah, and the fact that we resonated with a lot of the stories that we've heard over the years, I think that also is like, oh wow, I mean, this has so many similarities to the stories that or the experiences that I've had. I think really for me makes it even more meaningful too.
Yeah, I'm always impressed by like when people say, I've listened to every episode of the show. I'm always like, gosh, thank you so much. That's a lot of time to be spending with us and our guests. But it's also like it's so interesting because I think almost all of them have said it's amazing how similar these stories are, and yet every single story is also so different. Like the beats are similar, and the beats are just wildly different. Or you catch like kind of patterns within that, And I think when you really have the privilege of sitting and listening to adoptees, I guess, tell their stories, and you really hear that, especially like for something as specific as Korean adoptees or Asian adoptees, then you really kind of get like, oh yeah, there is. I think you start to see the broader systems at play where maybe you don't see how systemic some of these things are if you just hear one person's story, but when you
Right.
hear story after story after story, and you're like, okay, yeah, I mean, I hear your story and it is unique, but also I'm starting to see kind of these higher powers, these meta players that are affecting some of the rhythms of these people's stories, which I think is just, yeah, it's just so fascinating.
Well, the more people that share, the more like contextualization you can build into your own story as you listen and receive that information. And also, like you were just saying, like it just adds to the collective fabric of this particular community, which is then itself a subset of larger communities, which then builds out that fabric. And yeah, the interplay, like I don't think that that's the right word, and now I'm like losing my where I wanted to go with that. But yeah, I was just agreeing with
Yeah,
what you were saying.
but and from what I said with the resonating with certain stories, and you said also that the similarities but the differences, I those differences I think for me are also so important because it's like, oh yeah, that's I don't know, just in general for the general public to hear different stories, to hear um, unique stories, and knowing that again, like we talked about it at the very beginning, is that not all stories are the same and things like that. Is I think that's what we need is more. I don't know, hearing more stories that are different as well, and becoming accepting of those stories and accepting of everyone's lives and not saying that everyone is the same. And I think that's important to a lot of people out there who may have closed-minded, or uh, sheltered experience is not hearing all of that other stuff that's happening. So
Yeah, 100%. I have a question for my fellow hosts who have been in almost 170 episodes with me, and we told our stories once at the beginning of the show. Do you think there's value in storytelling now in 2025? And do you think there's value in telling your story multiple times?
I mean, I would say yes, just because there's a lot of people out there. I mean, I don't think telling your story once. I mean, I think it's nice to tell a story once and have some people hear it and get it off your chest if you need to have never told your story for the first time. But I think it becomes more real each time you tell it, and each time somebody else hears it who hasn't heard it. It's again, you're touching different people in different areas and different reasons, and people resonate with some stories, and then it's different for other people. So, I mean, why only tell it once and move on? It's all those other people who are listening, like Patrick said, the privilege of listening to it as well I think is important.
I mean, I think that if you want to tell your story more than a single time, yeah, obviously go for it. Like, I think that's the opportunity that we all have that maybe not all of us are aware that we can take advantage of, and repeating said story. I also think that for some people, telling it the single time is enough, because I think generally like when I think there's another layer to the question of like, is it enough to just tell our stories one time? It's like, well, are we telling our story in totality in that single instance? Are we talking about a single aspect of our story? When are we telling the story? And I think for me, I'm now unpacking it and I'm like, okay, well, obviously I'd want to tell my story multiple times because I'm telling it at different points in my life. So like when I was 25 and still making music, my storytelling expression or how I was expressing storytelling came through that, and I was telling my story in a specific way. And then when I was 30 and I was going through this epiphany and coming to consciousness, I started to talk about my story differently. 2 years after that, when I had my moment of embracing fully my identity in New York, that I think I started to talk about my identity a little bit differently after that, or my story. And then after starting therapy too, definitely changing the way that I kind of talk about my experiences and my story. And also like I'm constantly just uncovering or discovering new things about my own story, upon reflection every day, or when I look at my son, and that forces me or causes me to maybe change the way or evolve the way that I tell the story of myself. So again, I think it's all contextual. If you want to do it, you definitely can. And I there's, like Nathan said, like there's definitely power in continuing to tell it. And if that's like what you're gonna like make a career out of, then you got to tell your story a bunch of times, and you got to get good at that. So it's like practice, and like that's something that I'm figuring out right now. Is like, oh, if I'm gonna get paid to like speak and stuff, I really got to be thinking about. I don't want to just say the same thing over and over again. I want to, and my life is changing constantly, and the way that I'm thinking about my past is changing constantly. I think so. That kind of forces me specifically to update along the way. I don't know if I answered the question, but
I think that's what I'm getting at. Is like we're on the show, and I think I really meant specifically like for the two of you, not like you in the broad sense, or one in the broad sense. But I think also like because what I would say is like, oh yeah, if somebody wants to hear my story, they can go listen to my podcast. like you know what I mean? Like that's the place where I'm doing that, because I am like, for me, it's like a defense mechanism. Like I have done the work on the podcast to think critically about the language that I choose, how I enter into storytelling, how I enter into story listening, that kind of stuff. And like I'm putting in a lot of emotional labor there, and I don't want to put it in other places. And then there's, I mean, and I think you make a great point, Patrick. Like, there is a lot of value in telling your story over and over again for context of time, for context of audience, to Nathan's point, like that kind of stuff. Like, I'm not saying like don't amplify your story. Like, I picked a very dumbly worded question as a way into this, but just thinking through, like, I guess the balance of, like doing the work to tell your story and keeping yourself from doing that work over and over and over again. And I think also the thing that is most intriguing to me, which we can get into a little bit, is like what it looks like to tell your story over and over and over again.
Well, I think I just answered that question for myself, but totally agree. Yeah, like I am now at a point where I have learned to shorten the amount of information that I share about my story, and then I will point them in a direction. Because I'm getting ready to give a presentation next month, and I was like, yeah, I've hosted over 300 and some episodes of podcast conversations. And I was just like, if you want to learn more about my stuff, like, that's where you can go. I'm like, I'm
300 hours of content.
Exactly. And so, now it's just like, I don't feel the need to have to over explain or to like go down that whole path. Like, I have the privilege of being like, oh, and you can check out literally all of that, all of the broad strokes that I just talked about in depth over.
Well, like you said, it's also contextual. So for me, it's who I'm telling my story to. I mean, if I find that there are certain elements of my story that this person might want to hear more about, like maybe they're, trying to search for their birth family and things like that, then I would talk a little bit more about that aspect of finding them. So it's like, I guess for me, I kind of cater it to that. And then also everyone I tell it to has different questions. So it's not always the way that they're going to take in that information isn't always the same. So sometimes they might ask a question that no one else has ever asked. And it's like, oh yeah, I have never answered that to, and so that kind of like enlightens me, maybe on a topic or situation.
I think defense mechanism is a good way to describe it, though, because it is. I have used it as like a shield sometimes, or as a way to get out of conversation quickly.
Yeah, like, just be like, you can listen to my podcast.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about doing something within kind of the public sphere, within public record, so that you can point to that and just like have an easy out and be like, oh, I wrote a blog post about it. Like, you should also do the link if you want to check it out. Whatever. Like, I just want to go back to my drink or my whatever I'm doing.
Do you feel like when you find yourself in that situation, are you executive summarizing stuff and then are like, okay, you can go check this out here, like, or I can send you the link, or you just like, how do you navigate out to the, oh, I wrote a blog post about it, I'll send you a link if you want it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I will typically, like, if I find myself in a situation where I'm diverting attention to something that I've already done, it's because, like, I kind of get the sense that the person that I'm talking to is genuinely interested, but is going to ask a bunch of follow-up questions that I don't care to answer, or is like politely asking but doesn't really care. Or like somewhere in the middle of like, maybe I'll like seed some information out about like what I'm up to. And if I can tell, they'll check out and be like, oh yeah, you can check us out here if you want to know more. And then I give them the opportunity to follow up, and I give them the easy out of like, all right, that's cool. Let's change gears, Yeah. So it's usually just like a conversation flow tool, if you will.
Smart.
I guess Koreans would call that nunchi, but
I'm so bad at feeling it out.
A way to just be like, either I'm not feeling it or you're not feeling it, but whoever's not feeling it, do this. Or if somebody's like really feeling it and I'm like, I would talk to you about it, but like now is not the time, then I'd be like, listen to this and I'll talk to you about it when a different moment is more, like, I don't want to yell at you in a bar about like my identity and stuff. But like, if you want to like listen and then go for coffee later and talk about it, then like, yeah, we can do that. Like,
yeah, I've been wrapped up I get too easily wrapped up in those bar conversations. Like, and I think it's the Midwest, like maybe the Indiana Midwest specifically in me, that's like can't get out of conversations.
Oh yeah, that definitely happened to me a lot more in the Midwest.
So tough. Well, like, no, it's just like me. I don't understand like the nuance of just being like, okay, bye, and then leaving. Like, I'm always like, and that's a nice, cool thing that's happening on the TV, and then we start talking about that shit or something.
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. Anyways, you were saying something before I rudely cut you off. You were gonna go somewhere with our conversation.
Probably. I don't know.
Railroad. Oh, well, you talked about wanting to talk about like the how of telling our story. I think I felt like I got into the technicality of how like I've gone over the last 4 years of telling my own story, or the last 10 years, but I'm assuming that's changed for y'all in some ways.
I mean, I do what you said. I've shortened it and tried to keep to certain key points.
Yeah, I think I've shortened it too. I think 160 episodes of the Janchi Show have told me to just stop talking so much.
Okay, so like you said, Nathan. So like a lot of it is contextual. Like it depends on who you're talking to. Do you feel like just in general, it's like we're at points now where it's only the short answer, and if it just really has to depend on the person, or is like I don't know what I'm trying to ask.
The person and the environment, as you already touched on too. I mean, I don't really go to bars anymore, so it's usually not that location. But yeah, it's where am I at that I'm telling the story, and do I have time to get into it? And a lot of times it's maybe, I mean, it could be with a fellow parent at the playground or something who's randomly asking me about stuff, or for example, I haven't done this yet. Allison wants me to, but there's actually our school is asking for people who have been naturalized and asking if anybody wants to come talk to the class about being naturalized. And I mean, it's a 3rd grade class. I mean, how much do I get into it on something like that? So I haven't actually agreed to do that yet. And but I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd be really curious on what kinds of questions the 3rd graders would have for me. So yeah, I think it's just dependent on who I'm talking to and what parts I want them to take out of it. Because, a lot of times if it's focused on like my reunion or something, or childhood, or maybe they're from Oklahoma as well, and, know something about the adoption agency, then I'll talk a little bit more about my upbringing or something. But
this is kind of a shift, I guess, in the focal point of our conversation. But
shift it up, bro.
I think one of the questions that I was having in my mind, and something that I've come up against, is, do you ever find yourself talking to a conservative friend or family member, but somebody who's like known you for a while, and like try to tell you some part of your story to make a point, and it just kind of like misses or falls flat, or you're like, that's not how I wanted this conversation to go?
Yeah, a lot. Oh, I want to say a lot. Well, actually, I guess it's not like maybe necessarily using my own story to prove that point, but maybe just like general social or even like actual statistical information to prove a point. And for whatever reason, like the positioning or how the conversation, or maybe even the approach. Okay, now I'm thinking about a specific instance I had with family members recently, or not recently, but a little while ago. Where the end of the conversation was, we ended in a good place, but it could have gone better had I approached it differently. But I was being influenced a lot by just my own emotions, by a lot of just societal things, by social media. And I think it just set me, even though it was a planned conversation, I think it set me to approach said planned conversation in the wrong way, to where all of the points I felt like I was trying to make, it was that much more difficult. Like, just created kind of an extra layer of barrier or hurdle to kind of
just extra friction
cross.
to work through.
Exactly.
I don't think I've had any specific one that I can think of at the moment.
Nathan's like, no, I don't talk to anybody.
I don't talk to that many old conservative friends. I mean, granted, I still have a lot of conservative family members. I have, I have topics that come up, but I can't think of an actual instance. I can remember things from way back when that the points just missed. and I just got frustrated and stopped talking about them. But and I feel that's like for me, a defense mechanism is if I feel that it's not going to go anywhere and this person is not going to understand where I'm coming from, I just stop. I'm like, okay, let's move on, because it's just going to frustrate me more.
I have found that all of the conservative people that I talk to about like some social stance, like trans rights, to just like be chill or whatever, all the conservative people that I talk to are also deeply religious. And anytime I feel like they say something that butts up against what I know they believe, I'll just start quoting the Bible at them, and then they get really angry at me. Well, they don't get really angry, but I can like tell that they're flustered. But I'm like, this is what you believe. I know it because that's what I used to believe. So like, why are you, whatever. I think that's just like my defense mechanism for just being like, stop being an asshole. While also probably being kind of an ass to them. Yeah, I don't know. I just like, I think about like in the church, we use this word testimony, and that's like a very popular thing that we talk about. Like, oh yeah, you gotta use your testimony to win people over, and you gotta use your testimony to bring people to Christ, and you need to be like ready to share your testimony at any point, which is just like holy speech for like just tell your story in a way that like brings people to want to come to church, I guess.
Right.
So like I think I come from like that oral tradition, really. And so sometimes I will go in and try to use my testimony of being adopted or being disabled or being Asian American, and I'll be like, swing and a miss. And it's just like, I'm like, am I doing something wrong? Am I bad at telling my story? Have I misthought about something? Or Patrick, like you, like did social media get me like ready for a fight that didn't exist, but then I made it exist by being ready for that fight? Like, like that kind of thing. And yeah, so I just wonder like what the role of, because we talked about at the beginning of the year how community was a big thing for at least for Patrick and I. Nathan, obviously now that I think about it, now that I remember, yeah, it's a big thing for you. So big thing for all of us. Community is important, storytelling is important, and yet I also wonder like what the role of storytelling is and how we can improve, how I can improve, I guess, for lack of specificity, and like trying to use a story to just like make the world more kind, I guess. I don't know. I don't have a question. More, I guess, this is welcome to Confession Hour with
No, I love
KJ.
it. I think it's
I feel you.
the thing that I think about when I hear you with what you just shared is that I would love for us to be able to share our stories without having to convince anyone of anything. I think I mean, I totally understand like testimony and of being like an evangelist of something to try and get people to come over to your cause or to your faith or what you believe or whatever it is, to sell somebody something.
I was like, and this is where we find out that Patrick is part of an MLM.
To convince somebody of something. I do have this really cool protein powder that I've been using.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
How many
Can
units
you
do I
send
have
me
to
your
sell?
affiliate link?
Actually, can you just talk to me? Just take me straight to your upstream.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just check out the JanchiShow.com/store.
We have now become a pyramid scheme.
It's all Herbalife.
But I think that's another thing that I think about with the privilege of it all is like, even as the storyteller, like part of that privilege is like, oh, I only have to tell as much as I want to tell. And also like when I am telling or when I'm sharing, why am I saying telling? When I'm sharing, it doesn't have to be for any other reason to than just share this is what my experience is. I think that we are at a point in time and in society that it's kind of really difficult to share personally without it taking on some sort of political meaning, particularly if you come from a marginalized or historically oppressed community or identity, because by your very existence, your very existence stands in contradiction of like white supremacy and of like a lot of stuff that's kind of happening in flashes and droves right now in the news. I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Is just like, will we ever get to this point where we can just share, or were we just sharing and having a conversation, and then all we leave better for is that we know each other more deeply. And it's not that I convinced you that, my God, adoption is fucking terrible, or some other specific.
Wait, is that what you believe? Because we're going to need to
stance.
have an off-air conversation about that. So I believe the opposite.
But it's not like there's no agenda behind our conversation. It's just like, even like right now, I don't think that there's an agenda, but there is, I think, the underlying theme of like, we do want to convince people that adoptees are all like just people, humans. And like, there is an undergirding to the conversation. Not that it makes it like a commodified thing or transactional or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, we're recording this now to go out and then to be in people's ears, and people are going to walk away with it from what they will, from any of our episodes. What were to happen were we to just never release any of this, and it was just us having these conversations together? Not that I don't think that it's great for us to share these widely, and for any adoptee or anybody that's sharing their story widely in any platform or medium. And I'm curious as to what it looks like for us to be like just doing this for no other reason than to just do it.
Yeah. And I would also say that it depends on the audience of the person you are telling or trying to discuss this with.
You're all about the audience this week.
There's a different type
how dare you take a nuanced, contextual approach to this conversation. I'm just trying to start some fights over here. How dare you stick to the spirit of the show, and I'm trying to cast this straight into 2025.
Maybe here's my as we were talking about my generational older age here talking.
Whoa,
is that
Nathan, we don't see age. Come on.
We're not ageist on this show.
Yeah.
I have found that there's certain people that are just old in their ways and will not change no matter what you say. And so I wonder if, to your point of telling your story, trying to convince somebody of a certain situation or certain, bringing in your personal experience makes it more personal on trying to convince them or sway them. But in reality, this person is not going to be swayed on this topic. And it's just harder because you're bringing in that personal thing versus just something that you maybe have read on the news in contradiction to whatever they may be saying or something. So because now you're also kind of taking it personal.
So what I'm hearing you say is maybe I care too much. The problem
not that you care too much. No, it's that the other person doesn't care enough. Those are the people that I'm actually worried about.
It's that I care too much, because it's actually most of the fights that I choose to pick are with people who I know will interact with my daughter, and they will make an off-color joke, or I guess in my mind, obviously not in their mind, but in my mind, they will make an off-color joke or say some throwaway comment that tells me that my daughter will not necessarily be fully safe in their presence, will not be fully seen in their presence, or that my daughter will be fully safe and seen in their presence, but like people who look like her will not be, and that then they're gonna have to reconcile, and my daughter is gonna have to reconcile like how people vote, what people say, the jokes they make, etc., with also coming out of the mouth of somebody who loves them, and that's that's what our show started out as, right? Is like we were all reckoning with like, hey, we're hearing a lot of things come out of the mouths of people who look like people who love us, or actual people who say they love us, and then they're like, wait, but the things that you're saying are really hurtful to
not
me,
love.
to people who look like me. So and I think that's why I'm like, I actually care. Maybe I do care too much. Maybe I should just give up, but like,
that's what I'm saying. You should never say you care too much. Nathan, you should never be too kind.
You're giving
you should
me
never care too much. So it's the other one. It's the other side that needs to care more.
Yeah. So it's the lack of compassion that really grinds my gears, and that I'm like, oh, you want to talk about compassion? Let me tell you about your boy Jesus real quick. Let me tell you,
talk to him.
And then they don't like that. They get really angry because I take them to church, and they're like, it's a Thursday.
We only go on Wednesdays and Sundays.
We go, we maybe go twice a week. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, so I think about that, and then I'm trying to like use my story because it is personal, because they're in my personal circle. And then I'm like, so I don't know. It's just like, I guess I just think about, I don't spend a lot of time like analyzing and preparing and be like, this is how I'm going to enter into this conversation. And, hindsight being like, oh, I wish I had said
Right.
something. And then I try next time to say something and I'm like, that wasn't right.
For sure. No, I feel that. I resonate with that a lot. I feel like I feel that a lot. And I feel like I walk away from conversations. Maybe this is being vulnerable, but I feel like I walk away from a lot of conversations being like, man, I wish I would have said this. And I feel like
yeah.
I know a lot of people who don't feel like that, who just say what they say and they say it. You know what I mean? And I like the idea of freedom, not that they aren't considered in what they're saying,
Whoa.
because I think that is, I think when I just said that, I'm like, okay, people might think that the people are just saying whatever. And it's just like, I don't think that that's the case at all. I think that, I don't know, there's just a assuredness, a confidence maybe in that I admire, envy maybe, in a way that I think I was always striving to reach or feel as a kid and even as an adult. And now I think looks kind of different for me as who I am now and living as this most whole version of myself. But maybe the most whole version of myself is somebody who doesn't ever have that level of confidence. I don't know. Does that make sense? I don't know if any of that makes sense, but that was just what it made me think of.
I hear you. Where you're like, I said this, and then I wished, like, thinking back, you're like, that doesn't exactly align with what I believe, and I don't know why I said that. Or it's like, maybe I could have phrased that better. But some version of like,
did
either
I explain a concept incorrectly?
Yeah,
like stuff like that. And it's like those like that type of thing is a tangible, fixable thing. Okay, I can just be more knowledgeable about the concept, but like things like that. It's just like I get hung up on stuff like that a lot out of conversations because for whatever reason, sometimes I feel like I place this importance on the conversation that I've had with this person. Like the world hinges, the narratives hinge on this conversation. It's like, why do I think that about myself? That's stupid.
The galaxy lives or dies by this one conversation's outcome.
Yeah.
I always wonder though if we're too hard on ourselves when we say things like that. Just like, did that person really take it this way and remember it? And so sometimes you just have to like let go and go, this person won't remember that.
But also then there is the other thought of like, you should be intentional with every conversation that you have. You should like enter into every interaction with another person with intentionality, with grace, with intelligence, with humility, and then so I think it's like it's a philosophical conversation, not philosophical in like what you believe, but philosophical in the way that you act. That like, this is who I want to be, this is who I am, so I should act this way, I should do that kind of thing. So like, it may not matter, but also you don't want to take the chance that like maybe that's the one time that they do remember. And I think that what we're like learning and leaning into is, as now experienced podcasters and adoptee storytellers, I guess you could say, adoptee story listeners, is like, Patrick, to your point, we have all learned a lot in the last couple of years. We have all like gained a lot of language and a lot of like just stuff in our brains. And I think now that we're trying to use it, we're like, oh man, that's not how we use it. Like just like a toddler learning how to walk. It's like, oh, I've got legs. Oh, I can use these legs, and then you fall down, except the toddler doesn't care. But like as a not toddler, you're like, well, I freaking care that I fell down because that's embarrassing, or that doesn't feel good, or that, whatever.
Well, it made me think of this because I was a guest on Adoptees Crossing Lines. It's a podcast, and I talked about the adoptee consciousness model. And I felt like the explanation that I gave was not good because I was a guest with J-Ron on on Adoption the Longview, and she talked about, instead of calling them phases, they call them touch points. And I was like, oh, I love that. And so I was trying to explain it and like use that language, and then like my head was all jumbled, and I had thought it through before going onto that podcast. And I was like, man, I need to be refreshing myself on some of this stuff, like frequently, or at least consistently and intentionally.
You know what? Yeah, you brought that up with our last guest, and I was like, "Oh, I thought about that a lot last year, and then I had a child, and that is not at all in my brain." You were like, "You're familiar with the adoptee concept?" I'm like, "Oh God, I was. Now I don't know."
Well, that's one of the reasons I'm excited to be doing the show. Getting back to a little bit of consistency, because I said on that show that I hadn't flexed my adoption muscles of my brain in a while in that way. And I was like, and it made me kind of sad. I was like, damn, I was be doing that a lot. And then I felt like I was off my game. And so, yeah, I'm excited to be back with y'all so I can get back on my game. It's selfish. I don't care about you guys. I just got to get better about guesting on other
forget
podcasts.
us. Yeah. Patrick is leaving. He's going to Conversation Piece Pod.
I mean, I'm already there, so I'm in both places. No. Two and one.
This is not a quantum realm.
I am the Quantum Mania realm. These are reasons why I don't want to talk at con too often either. It's because I'm afraid I'm going to say something wrong or explain something wrong sometimes. So, like you were saying, I need to be more intentional sometimes with what I say, and I feel like as I get older, I get less quick with what I'm thinking and what's coming out of my mouth. It's like it's not clicking sometimes because I'm so much into other modes. I'm in parent mode, or I'm in organizing mode, or I'm in, I'm not in, let's talk about adoption, mode, like you were saying. So
if it makes you feel any better, I don't remember a single thing that was said at the bar at con last year, but I do remember walking away having had a great time with everyone. So
yeah,
same.
I do
great
too.
time.
I mean,
always great time. Great conversations.
Yeah. Well, that was our episode on storytelling, figuring out the rhythms. We're glad to be with you. Glad to be, continuing on in 2025.
Glad to be back. 169.
Happy
We're
March
making
time.
it real. I bought snacks. That means we have to do the recordings so that the snacks don't go bad.
When was the last time we had a snack on the show? Somebody look it up and put it in the comments.
I literally do not remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I just know I bought snacks last year, and then we stopped recording, and all those snacks went bad. So that's all I know. So let's prevent that from happening. This is
Nathan's not pissed.
It's on air. It's on air.
You send us expired snacks. I'm on air saying that I've received.
I may still send you an expired snack, and you'll eat it.
Emily said, "At least he said it something."
Exactly. I'm going to make you eat it.
Exactly. I'm not a good gift giver. She knows
No,
this.
It's okay. She knows this. I'm just sending you snacks.
Right.
I still use those chopsticks you sent or gave me. So
nice.
Yeah.
Gifted chopsticks. I will use them if anybody's out there looking to buy me a gift for some reason.
There you go.
Anybody listening to the show looking to buy me a gift.
So one other thing before we finish up here, something that I heard me and Korea is doing is there's an adoptee.
Wait, sorry,
park.
Is that you and the nation of Korea are up to hijinks?
Me specifically and Korea. No, me and Korea organization. They're doing there's a adoptee park or a park in Daegu in north of Seoul that is dedicated to Korean adoptees, and they're doing a fundraiser memorial kind of thing where they're raising money to put in like these plaques. They're doing an art show. They're doing a bunch of stuff. They've added sculptures. I think it's an ongoing thing that they've been doing to this park. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So I don't know. Have you been to this park, Patrick? Because I know you went to Korea on a few tours. But
no, I didn't even know about it until you sent the thing.
Okay, so yeah, it's just north of. It's real close to the North Korea demilitarization zone. Yes, thank you. And so, so they're doing a fundraiser. No, I wouldn't call it a fundraiser. I guess they're doing I don't know.
It's like an art installation piece, right?
Art installation. Yeah, you get to essentially suggested donation of $20 to get a little plaque with your name and your Korean name. So you get both.
Yeah, it's like you submit name tags, and
submit a photo, write a letter to your birth mother, maybe that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was part of the art
part. Impetus is of
So-
this? Like, is it just to have like raise awareness of adoptees in the Korean diaspora? Is that like kind of the point, or?
I think so. I have only been privy to the information of this thing since last week, so it's only been a week now. I know Eric and Rosie were both working on it, so he told me about it, and I looked it up recently, and was like, oh, this sounds great. So I mean, I paid and filled out the form, so you can find it on the. I should have looked this up before.
We can put it in the show notes.
Down in the notes. Yeah,
it's meinkorea.org.
Yeah.
Omapoom 2025 OMMAPOOM.
Yeah.
You'll see it in the menu on the right hand side if you're on mobile, and I don't know if you're on desktop.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, I was just
I
like,
think it's pretty cool.
I don't know. I saw it. Yeah, I was really interested in it. So I'm excited to look at it. And thanks for passing it along, because it looks like, I don't know. I wish I could go and see it, because it looks like it would just be a really powerful image, like as much as
they are going to have the opening ceremony in June.
Yeah.
So for this, where they put everything up and hang up all these customized nameplates.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It just seems so cool. In like a beautiful and tragic and lovely kind of way, in the way that art can be. To see so many adoptees there
from all over the world.
Yeah, and just to know that that's just a subsect of all of us.
Speaking of storytelling, that's a story right there.
I do know that the deadline is April 30th, so go check out that website.
Oh yeah, so by the time this episode drops, get on it. Don't dilly dally if you're interested.
Don't dilly dally. We in the Midwest. That's cool. Me in Korea, good organization. They got good tours. If you are ever interested, so check them out. But yeah, we're back. We did it. 169 in the books. If you want to check out cool stuff that we do, you can go to our website, janchishow.com. We have all the archives there. We have a defunct merch store, so you can go there and not buy anything for us. That would be great.
We might still have the Buy Me a Coffee, though. So
okay, we might potentially have ways of support, but one of the best ways you can support us is by leaving us a rating or review on whatever podcast player or potentially YouTube thing that you're watching us on. We also love to hear from y'all. You can send us an email to janchishow@gmail.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 972-677-8867.
Still remember. Good job.
We haven't had... I know, I've just pulled that literally out of my butt. We haven't had a voicemail.
That's why your son has pink eye. Pulling stuff out of your butt. So it's your fault.
Oh my God, you're not wrong. Yeah, we haven't had a voicemail in a while, so send us something. Other than that, you can find me at Patrick in the World on Instagram, or at Conversation Piece Pod, also on Instagram for my other show, Conversation Piece. Checks out YouTube. We got cool stuff going on right now. So
over 118 episodes.
Well, we have even more of that. That's just the numbered episodes, not counting any bonus or
special
episodes. Yeah, so I would say we're probably close to like 140, honestly.
Dang.
Maybe I will catch us.
Exactly. Well, it's nice knowing everyone. So, no, okay. You'll find me on Instagram at Nowalk.
All right.
I am not on Blue Sky yet, but I'm considering it.
Blue Sky. I thought about getting Blue Sky because I was like, oh yeah, I want to be on a social network that isn't like owned by Meta or isn't problematic. But then I was like, but then I'm on another social media network, and that's exhausting.
I don't get how you get people to see your content. I got a lot of followers, and nobody's seeing my stuff. Actually, I don't have that many followers at all, so I'm confused over that. I stopped using it.
Yeah, it's got some cool stuff, but this is not a social media podcast. The point is, I'm at KJ Roelke wherever I want to be found on the internet. Honestly, check out my website, I guess, for the things that I write.
He just had another cool website go live recently.
Oh yeah, it's true. But I would also say, beyond leaving a rating or review, probably the best thing you can do if you like the show and you want to support it is just tell someone else to check it out.
Yep, that too.
Just put it on your social media and your story.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, just be like, hey, I think you should check this out. Or you know what? If you've got somebody in your life and you're like, I'm an adoptee and you need an out, just say like, just go listen to this podcast. You'll get the gist. And then if you're not a guest, then come be a guest. And if you are a guest, then your episode, just point them to your episode number. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And until next time, Janchi,
Hey yo.